Welcome to another episode of Carib Money Report. I am Kimberly Ramkalawan. This week, we listen into CARICOM foreign affairs ministers and their plans for multilateralism for boosting regional economies. And first quarter reports for conglomerate Massey show its performance growth attributed to the Guyanese market. Our This Week in History segment goes back to the Bridgetown Declaration. To find out what that means, stay tuned as Carib Money Report starts now. Antigua and Barbuda is now a member of CAF, the Development Bank of Latin America and the Caribbean. We now recap some of the major business events and headlines making regional rounds this week. Caribbean nations are scoring high when it comes to their multilateralism index. This according to the latest UN report, putting Barbados and Antigua and Barbuda at first and second globally in its multilateralism index. The report puts the Caribbean nations on top after particular evaluation of its treaty ratification, votes at the UN General Assembly, membership in UN organizations, participation in conflicts and militarization, use of unilateral sanctions, and financial contributions to the United Nations. Jamaica comes in at 6th, while Trinidad and Tobago at the 15th, St. Vincent and the Grenadines at 16th, followed by the Bahamas at 17th. However, Barbados' engagement and push for the Bridgetown Initiative is said to have played a role in its score, having consistent support for multilateral cooperation and its active role on the global stage, noting Barbados demonstrates strong engagement across all 4 dimensions of the index. Its top score reflects a steadfast commitment to the UN system and international norms. The Caribbean nations outperformed the United States, having come in at position 193 when it comes to multilateralism. CARICOM is assuring its people that it will continue to work at the global front in building and maintaining relations in an effort to keep its development efforts afloat, especially in meeting the Sustainable Development Goals by 2030. Comments were made by Secretary General Dr. Carla Barnett as she opened this year's COFCOR meeting in St. Kitts.
CARICOM's careful and coordinated preparation for participating in these processes will be important to effectively advocate to ensure that our voices are heard and our priorities are addressed. This is particularly important in the area of financing, where we will continue to advocate for the implementation of both the Bridgetown Initiative and the Multidimensional Vulnerability Index, as well as reconsideration of recent cuts in technical assistance and international donor funding.
And while some states might be daunted by the future, outgoing COFCOR Chairman Vince Henderson says countries in the region should not allow it to define us negatively, but instead see this as an opportunity to grow economies.
But it is also a call for us to be more determined in our pursuits for socio-economic development for our people. After all, that's why we're here, that's why we do this. And it's only once we have determined those very important ambitions that we can interface as a community with third states. Because sometimes we struggle on our messaging, we struggle on our approaches that we should use with partners, and we even struggle on which countries should become partners and allies and friends. But it seems to me we need to determine for ourselves how we see this Caribbean civilization evolving.
The meeting, however, closed off with a contingent of foreign ministers agreeing that multilateralism be continued on the UN level, as well as other foreign organizations, if the region is to continue to receive funding for much of its ongoing developmental projects.
Hemispheric relationships that we have gathered over the years, examined where we are with those relationships presently and where we expect them to be in the future. Of course, we've been part of the multilateral system. We looked at our relationship with the United Nations,
but looking at the wider issues of indebtedness and how it is that we seek to access grant funding, graduation, how it is that middle-income countries versus least developed countries, how we access international finance, and how it takes recognition of our size and our constraints on growth.
Meanwhile, this year's meeting was graced by Philippines Foreign Affairs Secretary Enrique Manalo. His visit coincides with the 25th anniversary of relations with several Caribbean states. However, a special trip was made to Grenada for the establishment of formal diplomatic relations through the signing of a joint communique with Grenadian Foreign Minister Joseph Andal. Currently, Grenada is home to many Philippine nationals working in the tourism, massage and therapy sector. Antigua and Barbuda is now the 23rd shareholder of the Development Bank of Latin America and the Caribbean CAF. The Caribbean nation completed the process to become a Series C shareholder earlier this month. Antigua and Barbuda joins fellow Caribbean states, the Bahamas, Barbados, the Dominican Republic, Jamaica and Trinidad and Tobago in being a member of the CAF. To commemorate the milestone, the national flag of Antigua and Barbuda was raised at CAF's headquarters in Caracas, Venezuela. In welcoming them to the fold, CAF in a statement shared, with this membership finalized, CAF's presence in the Caribbean region continues to expand, demonstrating its commitment to supporting the development priorities of Caribbean Small Island Developing States (SIDS). CAF's Executive President Sergio Diaz-Granados remarked on the occasion.
Officially welcome Antigua and Barbuda into our CAF family of shareholding countries. In 2022, when we changed our name to include the Caribbean, it was because of CAF's deep commitment to the region. Antigua and Barbuda Incorporation represents another important step in that journey of strengthening our bond with the Caribbean and serving as a trusted development partner that listens to our shareholders and understands the unique challenge faced by Caribbean states. As Executive President, I look forward to supporting the government for people of Antigua and Barbuda as we continue to advance sustainable and inclusive growth across the entire region.
Antigua and Barbuda is the latest CARICOM nation to attain membership following the Bahamas in November 2024. In Trinidad and Tobago, its upstream energy sector, EOG Resources, is indicating there has been an oil discovery at the Beryl well in the Teak Salmon and Puy TSP deep area of Trinidad's east coast. Chief Operating Officer Jeff Letzel made the comment during the Houston-based company's latest earnings call and first quarter 2025 financial results, where he highlighted the discovery.
Trinidad obviously has been more gas than oil, but what I will say is, at least on this prospect with Beryl, we knew going into it that there was a potential of an oil-bearing target there. I think the questions really were just, how prolific it was going to be and whether or not it was going to be large enough to be economic. So, obviously, whenever you're looking at gas and oil, there's several geologic factors that really influence that. Whether it's the depth, the source rock, the position within structure. But ultimately, what we really use to identify this is just the advanced seismic tools to really see the accumulations and try to really tell whether it's gas or oil. And then what we ultimately did is confirm the fluid type from an exploration aspect.
Beryl is located in about 170 feet of water depth and hits 125 plus feet of high-quality oil-bearing net pay. EOG's work plan this year also includes drilling and completing 4 net wells at the Mento field in the Scar, Mento, and Reggae SMR offshore area, a 50-50 joint venture with BP, with first gas expected this year. EOG is the operator of both these fields. Under another partnership with BP, EOG said construction will start this year on a platform at the Coconut offshore field, with first gas expected in 2027. Multilateralism dominating the minds of everyone in the region, looking at new avenues for doing business. We take a break now. Stay with us.
We want you to advertise with us. Join us as the premier business magazine and news outlet covering the Caribbean. Contact us today at 868-783-5094.
This week, Massa reported a $7.9 billion growth in the last 6 months. We find out some more on their performances in this week's Market Trends Report. Massey Group is sharing a growth of $7.9 billion in less than 6 months. This after the group reported an after-tax profit of $365 million for the 6-month period ending March 31st, 2025, marking a 20% increase compared to the same period in the previous year. The $7.9 billion growth is equivalent to 3.9% more than generated in the comparable period in the previous year. In his chairman's remarks, Robert Riley attributed the performance to growth across all markets, with Guyana standing out with 13% growth in retail and 10% growth in distribution channels. The portfolio's success was further enhanced by gross profit contributions from new product lines. Riley shared the strong financial performance has allowed the Massey Group to maintain its focus on key strategic areas. Our operational improvements leverage technology to increase efficiency and maintain competitive pricing, while its commitment to transparent investor communication remains steadfast. Massey noted that in line with the quarterly dividend policy announced earlier this year, it declared a dividend of $3.54 per share for the second quarter of its 2025 financial year, representing a half-year dividend of $7.08, a 125% increase over the prior year interim dividend. Moving across to how markets performed, the Trinidad and Tobago Stock Exchange recorded a volume of 445,415 put-through transactions valued at $3,125,722 TT dollars for this week. 3 out of 4 market indices declined by 0.84% and 1.18%, while one index increased by 0.22%. There were advances in 8 securities, in which one Caribbean Media and GMMB Group Limited increased the highest by 14.94% and 10% respectively. A total of 11 stocks declined, in which the largest decreases were seen by Scotiabank Trinidad and Tobago at 5.52% and Antigua Limited by 3.75%. Overall, 7 securities remain unchanged. At the Jamaican Stock Exchange, a total of 60,557,541 securities valued at $581,291,029 Jamaican dollars traded for the week. Kingston Wharves Limited joined the top 3 securities traded for the week, along with Wigton Energy Limited and Trans Jamaican Highway Limited. A total of 65 stocks were traded for the week. Of these, 22 advanced, with Stanley Motor Limited and 138 Student Living Jamaica Limited increased the most by 14.75% and 9.52% respectively. There were declines in 33 stocks, in which JMMB Group Limited saw the largest decrease by 12.5% and Palace Amusement Company Limited by 10.71%. Overall, 10 stocks traded firm. Hopping across to the Barbuda Stock Exchange, where it recorded a volume of 15,088 shares valued at $37,818 Barbadian dollars, traded on a regular market for this week. The top 3 securities traded were CIBC Caribbean Bank Limited, capturing approximately 90% of the market with 13,623 shares, Epley Caribbean Property Development Fund at 700, and Emira Deposit Receipt with 458 shares. Overall, 3 securities advanced, 1 declined, and 20 remain unchanged. The Eastern Caribbean Securities Exchange market reported a sum of 10,864 shares valued at $68,514 AC dollars traded for the week. The top 3 securities traded were St. Kitts Nevis Anguilla National Bank Limited with 4,934 shares, Grenada Cooperative Bank Limited at 3,824, and East Caribbean Financial Holding Company Limited with 1,335 shares. Overall, a total of 5 securities were traded, in which 1 advanced by 7.7% and 4 traded firm. The security that advanced was TDC Limited. This week we are seeing some resumed uptick in performance in the region. Some good news for investors. We pause to take in this message.
We want you to advertise with us. Join us as the premier business magazine and news outlet covering the Caribbean. Contact us today at 868-783-5094.
Once again, we roll back the hands of time as we look at this week in history. On a hot and sunny Saturday in May 1997, then Prime Minister of Barbados, Owen Arthur, would open his backyard to a then visiting U.S. President Bill Clinton to sign the Bridgetown Declaration, an agreement with the aim of improving trade relations and security for a Caribbean region. Some 14 Caribbean leaders were present at the one-day summit. Dubbed the Principles and Plan of Action Declaration, Prime Minister Owen Arthur described it as historic, having been the first U.S. summit on Caribbean soil, addressing crucial matters of the time.
The signing of the Bridgetown Declaration of Principles is a tangible expression of the new partnership between the Caribbean states and the government and the people of the United States of America. Equally important is the plan of action, which gives concrete expression to the commitment of the Caribbean states and United States of America to cooperate on trade, development, finance, the environment, as well as on justice and security.
The declaration aimed to enhance trade and investment between the U.S. and the Caribbean region, including exploring the possibility of a free trade area of the Americas FTAA, something President Clinton expressed hopes of seeing with the expansion of trade in the region.
The Partnership for Prosperity and Security in the Caribbean that we signed today is a broad and ambitious plan of action. It can make a real difference for our people's lives and livelihoods, promoting open and fair trade, protecting the environment, strengthening education, spreading telecommunications, extending loans to small businesses, and combating international crime and drug trafficking.
However, then Jamaican Prime Minister P.J. Patterson was the one to raise the issue of the region's fair trade of its bananas, a matter that had been before the World Trade Organization for some time.
For many of our countries, bananas is to us what cars are to Detroit.
And while a majority of the Bridgetown Declaration dealt with the issue of crime and narcotics entering the region, negotiations were described as having been tense, with Jamaica having signed a pact and Barbados initialed a tentative agreement for that week, citing that their sovereignty might have been at stake, while the FTAA would also go down in the books for the Caribbean as having a sort of challenge relationship with the region. Caribbean leaders representing and welcoming then U.S. President Bill Clinton. We take a short break for some messages. Stay with us.
We want you to advertise with us. Join us as the premier business magazine and news outlet covering the Caribbean. Contact us today at 868-783-5094.
Well, thank you for tuning in this week for another episode of Carib Money Report. I'm Kimberly Ram-Calawan. Join us next week as we trot through the region's business pages.